A Hell's Angel grabs a terrified black woman's arm and whispers, "Pretend to kiss me for 10 minutes." She thinks it's a cruel joke until she sees the gang outside, guns drawn, hunting him. What happens next stuns everyone because instead of running, she leans in and saves his life. But when her little sister is kidnapped by the same bikers, this single act of mercy turns into a dangerous race for redemption. He's a wanted man with a broken past. She's a woman of faith who swore she'd never trust a sinner. Now, the two of them must fight side by side against his old gang and against their own doubts before it's too late. She only wanted to help a stranger. But what if that stranger was the key to saving her family and her faith? Would you risk everything to save the man the world calls a monster? Drop a comment below and share which part of the world you're tuning in from today. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more. The gas station sat like a lonely island on Route 41, its flickering lights cutting through the darkness. Inside, Adeline Miller mopped the floor for the third time that night, humming softly to distract herself from the silence. It was past midnight, and the hum of the refrigerators was the only company she had. She was tired, but couldn't afford to stop. Every hour meant a little more money for rent and her sister's college fund. Outside, the wind carried a low, distant rumble. At first, Adeline thought it was thunder, but soon the deep growl turned into the sharp roar of motorcycles. The sound made her shoulders tighten. She set the mop aside and looked through the glass door. Headlights cut through the fog, and then came the flashes of metal, chrome, leather, and the glint of helmets. Her heart skipped. The last thing she wanted was trouble. But trouble was rolling straight toward her. 5 bikers pulled into the lot, their engines growling like angry dogs. One of them jumped off his bike and shoved another. Shouting echoed across the pavement. Adeline ducked behind the counter, peeking just enough to see. It wasn't just an argument, it was a full fight. Fists flew. One man stumbled into a gas pump, blood streaking down his cheek. "Not here, Ridge," a voice yelled. "You're done." She froze at the name. Ridge? Whoever he was, he looked half dead already. A tall, broad-shouldered man with gray stubble and a torn leather jacket staggered backward. His face was rough but tired, and blood ran down from a cut near his temple. The other bikers surrounded him, yelling curses. Then one of them pulled a knife. Adeline's heart pounded in her ears. She dropped behind the counter, whispering a shaky prayer. "Lord, please make them leave." But a second later, the station door burst open. The man called Ridge stumbled inside, one arm clutching his ribs. "Please," he gasped, his breath ragged. "They'll kill me." Before Adeline could react, the doorbell chimed again. Another biker stepped in, scanning the aisles. Ridge's eyes darted toward her. He grabbed her wrist with surprising strength and whispered, "Pretend to kiss me for 10 minutes. Please, just, please." Adeline's mind spun. "What?" she whispered. He looked at her with desperate eyes, the kind of eyes that had seen too much pain. "They'll think I'm just with a girl. They won't look twice." Outside, she could see shadows moving. She didn't think. She just acted. Her trembling hands reached for his collar, and she pulled him close. The smell of leather and gasoline filled her nose. His beard brushed her cheek. The other biker pushed the door open wider, his boots heavy against the floor. Adeline's heart felt like it would explode. "Yo, Ridge!" the biker shouted. "You hiding in here?" Ridge didn't answer. He tilted his head, and before Adeline could stop herself, she kissed him. Quick, clumsy, terrified. The biker froze. His eyes narrowed. "Ain't you busy tonight?" he sneered. then spit on the floor and turned away. "Forget him, boys. He ain't worth it." The door slammed shut. The sound of engines faded away. Adeline pulled back, breathless. Her hands shook as she whispered, "You're bleeding." Ridge leaned against the counter, his voice barely above a whisper. "You just saved my life." She didn't know what to say. The situation felt unreal, like a movie that had gone off script. She grabbed the first aid kit from under the counter and handed it to him. "Sit. You're not going anywhere until I clean that cut." He obeyed, wincing as he sat. She could see the tattoos on his arms, skulls, flames, and a small silver cross glinting under his shirt collar. "You a churchman?" she asked quietly. Ridge's mouth twitched. "Used to be." For a long while, the only sound was the soft tearing of bandages. She poured antiseptic on his wound, and he hissed in pain. "I didn't mean to scare you," he said. "I just didn't want to die tonight." "You shouldn't be running with people like that," she said, her voice trembling more than she wanted. He gave a low, bitter laugh. "You think I don't know that?" When she finished bandaging him, she poured him a cup of coffee from the pot behind the counter. He drank it like he hadn't tasted warmth in years. "What's your name?" she asked. "Ridge," he said simply. "And you?" "Adeline." He nodded slowly, like he was memorizing it. "Adeline, you got a kind heart. That's dangerous in this world." Before she could answer, he stood. "They'll come back when they realize I'm alive. You should lock your doors and forget you saw me." "Wait, what did you do?" He hesitated at the door. "I said no to something I should have never been part of." He looked back, his eyes weary. "Don't ever think helping someone like me was a mistake." Then he was gone. Adeline locked the door behind him and leaned against it, shaking. Outside, the night felt heavier than before. She turned off the lights one by one, then sat behind the counter until dawn, unable to shake the feeling that her life had just changed forever. By morning, the gas station was busy again. Truckers, travelers, and the regulars. No one noticed how quiet Adeline was. When her shift ended, she climbed into her old sedan and drove home through the sleepy town of Pine Hollow. Her apartment was small but tidy, filled with the scent of coffee and laundry detergent. Janelle, her younger sister, greeted her with a smile from the kitchen table. "Morning, sis. You look like you wrestled a bear." Adeline forced a tired laugh. "Close enough?" Janelle waved her phone excitedly. "Guess what? The hospital called me for an interview next week. If I get this job, I can finally pay for my nursing license." "That's wonderful," Adeline said, hugging her. But her mind was elsewhere. On Ridge's pale face, the knife outside, the way his voice had broken when he said, "used to be." She pushed the thought away. Whatever happened last night, it was over. That evening, as she folded laundry in the living room, she caught a glimpse of something outside the window. A motorcycle, parked across the street. Its engine was silent, but the rider sat still, helmet reflecting the lamplight. Adeline froze. After a few seconds, the bike started and rolled away. Maybe it was nothing, she told herself. Maybe it was just nerves. But when she lay in bed that night, she couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the moment, the desperation in Ridge's voice, the way he said, "Please," like a prayer. She didn't know it yet, but that one moment of kindness had set something much larger in motion. And before the week was over, kindness would cost her everything she loved. The sun crept slowly over the horizon, turning the gray sky soft gold. Adeline stood by her kitchen window, sipping her coffee and watching the morning light touch the rooftops. The world outside looked normal again, quiet, calm, harmless, but inside her hands wouldn't stop trembling. She hadn't told Janelle what happened last night. How could she? Who would believe a biker had burst in, begged her to pretend to kiss him, and nearly brought death to her workplace? She told herself it was over. Ridge had gone. The gang wouldn't care about her. Yet every creak in the hallway made her flinch, and every motorcycle rumble in the distance made her chest tighten. Janelle came out of her bedroom, bright and cheerful as always, her braids tied back neatly. "You're up early. Did you even sleep?" "Not much," Adeline admitted, forcing a smile. "Had a long night at the station." "Then you should call in sick. You look pale." Adeline shook her head. "We need every paycheck, Janelle. Besides, the world doesn't stop for tired people." Janelle sighed, half teasing, half worried. "You and your sayings. One of these days you'll run out of gas, sis." "I'll keep going," Adeline said softly. "As long as I have to." After breakfast, she drove back to the gas station, trying to ignore the unease curling in her stomach. The morning rush was busy enough to keep her distracted. Coffee orders, customers, small talk. But around noon, a police cruiser pulled up outside. Her stomach dropped. 2 officers walked in, one older, one young and silent. The older one nodded politely. "Ma'am, are you Adeline Miller?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, sir." He flipped open a notepad. "We're following up on a report from last night. There was a fight involving a local biker gang near this property. We found traces of blood and tire marks out back. Did you happen to see or hear anything?" Adeline swallowed hard. Images of Ridge bleeding on the floor flashed in her mind. She wanted to tell the truth, but something inside her warned that doing so would only drag her into danger. "No," she said quietly. "I didn't see anything. I just worked my shift and went home." The officer studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. "All right. If you remember anything, give us a call." He left a card on the counter before walking out. When they were gone, she sank onto a stool, heart racing. You just lied to the police, she thought. But what choice did she have? If those bikers found out she'd talked, they'd come for her. Or worse, for Janelle. After her shift, Adeline locked up early. The wind had picked up, sending dry leaves swirling across the parking lot. She lingered by her car, glancing toward the highway. For a moment she thought she saw someone standing in the distance, broad-shouldered, motionless. But when a truck roared past, the figure vanished. Back home, Janelle was sitting at the table filling out her job application, humming to herself. "You're home early," she said, smiling. "Did something happen?" Adeline hesitated. "Just a slow day." Janelle frowned. "You sure? You look like you've seen a ghost." Adeline smiled faintly. "Maybe I have." She didn't eat much dinner that night. Long after Janelle went to bed, Adeline sat awake in the dim light of the living room, staring at the phone on the counter. Ridge had scribbled a number on a napkin before leaving. She'd kept it, though she wasn't sure why. Finally, she picked up the phone and dialed. It rang twice before a tired voice answered. "Yeah? Is this Ridge?" she asked softly. There was a pause. "Who's asking?" "Adeline, from the gas station." Silence, then a soft sigh. "Did they come back?" "No, but the police did." He cursed under his breath. "You didn't tell them, did you?" "No," she said quickly. "But I needed to know if you're all right." "I'm breathing," he said. "That's about it." "Where are you?" "Doesn't matter," he said, then paused. His tone softened. "You shouldn't have called me. Those men, they don't forget. If they saw your face, you're not safe." Adeline's throat tightened. "I was trying to help." "And you did." His voice wavered, low and honest. "You didn't have to. People don't help men like me anymore." Something in his tone, regret, Sorrow pulled at her. "Maybe they should," she said quietly. A long silence followed. "You ever pray?" Ridge asked finally. She blinked. "Sometimes." "Do it tonight," he said. "You're gonna need it." The line went dead. Adeline stood there, the dial tone buzzing in her ear. She wanted to feel angry, but all she felt was afraid. For him, for herself, for Janelle. She pressed the phone against her chest, whispering a shaky prayer. "Lord, keep us safe." The next day passed quietly. Adeline went to work, Janelle went to her study group, and the world spun on like nothing had changed. But just after sunset, Adeline came home to find the apartment door cracked open. Her heart stopped. "Janelle?" she called, stepping inside. The lights were still on. Her sister's backpack was on the floor, one strap torn. Papers were scattered across the rug. "Janelle!" she shouted again, panic rising in her throat. Silence answered. Then her phone buzzed in her hand. It was a text from an unknown number. "You helped Ridge. Now you'll help us. $10,000 by tomorrow night. Or your sister rides with us." Below it was a photo. Janelle, tied to a chair, tears streaking her cheeks. Adeline's knees gave out. The phone fell from her hand and hit the floor. For a long moment she couldn't breathe. Then she did the only thing she could think of. She called Ridge's number again. This time he answered on the first ring. "They took her," she sobbed. "My sister. They took her. They said your name." There was a long, heavy silence. When Ridge finally spoke, his voice was like gravel. "Where are you?" "At my apartment." "Stay put. I'm coming." "Don't," she cried. "They said—" "Doesn't matter," he cut in. "This is my fault. I'll fix it." The line clicked off. Outside, the night wind howled through the alleyways. Adeline stood in the doorway, shaking. She didn't know if she was waiting for a savior or a storm. 20 minutes later, the roar of a single motorcycle echoed down her street. The motorcycle's growl rolled through the street and settled like thunder under Adeline's ribs. She stood frozen in the doorway until the headlight clicked off and the night went quiet again. The rider swung a leg over the bike and pulled off his helmet. It was him. Ridge's hair was damp with sweat, and a cut on his cheek shone in the porch light. "Inside," he said, voice low, eyes scanning the shadows. "Now." Adeline stepped back. He slipped in, shut the door and slid the chain across. His gaze moved fast. Front room, hallway, kitchen, like he measured danger the way other men measured, air. When he turned back to her, his face softened at the sight of her shaking hands. "They took Janelle," she whispered. "They sent a photo. She's tied to a chair. They want 10,000 by tomorrow night." "Show me," he said. She unlocked her phone with clumsy fingers and pulled up the text. Ridge studied the image. He zoomed in, eyes narrowing at details most people would miss. The scuffed concrete floor, a yellow line on the ground, a dirty window in the corner with wire mesh. "That's not somebody's house," he said. "That's a warehouse or a garage. See that yellow stripe? And the wire in the glass? Looks like an old industrial building." "Can you find it?" Adeline asked, breath catching with hope and fear. "If I find the man who sent this," he answered, "I'll find her." Another message buzzed in. "Money in a duffel. Go alone. No cops. We're watching." Ridge's jaw tensed. "Viper," he muttered. "He's making it personal." "Who is he?" she asked. "He runs the chapter I walked away from," Ridge said. "He hates traitors, and he hates people who show mercy. He wants to make an example of me using your sister." Adeline swayed, steadying herself on the back of a chair. "Then we have to call the police." Ridge shook his head. "We will, but not yet. If they sniff cops near a drop, Janelle moves or gets hurt. We need proof of life, a voice, a clock, and a plan." "I can't just sit here," she said, voice cracking. I need to do something. You will, he said. He pointed to a bar stool. Sit. Breathe. We're going to do this smart. For a moment, she wanted to fight him, to shout that her sister was not a puzzle to solve. Then she saw his hands. They were steady, solid, like he had pulled people out of burning cars or broken glass before. She sat and listened. First, he said, we reply on their terms but not with fear. He typed, I need to hear her voice. Call me in 10 minutes. If she's okay, I'll bring the money. He hit send and laid the phone face down on the counter. 10 minutes is a lifetime, Adeline whispered. Then we fill it, he said. He moved through her kitchen, opening drawers like he had a map of every home he entered. He found duct tape, a small flashlight, a roll of kitchen twine. He pocketed the flashlight, left the tape, and put the twine back. You got a first aid kit? Hall closet, she said, standing. Top shelf. He grabbed it and set it by the door. Water, protein bars, anything you can carry. She moved on instinct, gathering bottles and granola from the pantry. The simple tasks kept her upright. When she turned back, Ridge was watching her with quiet respect, like he knew the war it took to keep moving when terror wanted her on the floor. The phone rang. Ridge lifted a finger for silence and answered. Speaker on. You got my attention? Janelle's voice spilled out, small and shaky. Addie? Adeline pressed both hands to her mouth. Baby, are you hurt? I'm okay, Janelle said fast, then muffled. A male voice barked. 30 seconds. Adeline forced her voice to stay calm. Listen to me. We love you. We're coming for you. Hold on. Don't be a hero. Breathe. Okay, Janelle whispered. I knew you. Her voice cut, replaced by a new one, smooth and cruel. 10,000, the man said. By tomorrow. Alone. Follow my rules or the girl gets a goodbye she won't finish. Ridge's voice went flat. Send the drop details. The call ended. A new text landed. Old Mill Road, South Lot. 10 p.m. Don't be clever. Ridge stared at the address for a long beat. He thinks I'll run straight at him, he said. So we won't. Adeline's head snapped up. We won't go. We'll go, Ridge said. But we won't bring money and a prayer. We'll bring eyes. I don't have eyes, she said, confused. I do, he answered. And I know a man who has more. What man? A pastor, he said, and the word sounded strange coming from a throat full of smoke and gravel. He used to ride with the worst of us. Then he met God and never let go. He has a safe house and he hears things. Adeline's fear hiccuped into a tiny, stunned laugh. A biker pastor. Don't let the collar fool you, Ridge said. He knows how wolves think. They left the apartment minutes later. Ridge told her to wear dark clothes and sturdy shoes. He took the back staircase, checked the alley, then walked her to the bike with his body between her and the street. He handed her a half helmet, and she realized his hands were shaking now that the phone had gone quiet. Have you ever ridden? He asked. She shook her head. Lean with me. Hang on like I'm a ledge and you're over a cliff. He managed a thin half smile. Because I am. And you are. The engine rumbled to life. The city blurred into silver threads of light, then thinned to open road. Wind pushed tears from Adeline's eyes. She pressed her cheek to the back of Ridge's jacket, felt the cross under the leather, and prayed without words. They rode 20 minutes into the dark until a low building appeared beyond a gravel lot, a church with a tin roof and a wooden cross lit by one tired floodlight. In back, a small shed glowed warm. Ridge killed the engine and listened. Crickets, a far-off dog. No engines. He led her to the shed and rapped twice, then once. The door opened on a large man with a gray beard and kind eyes. He wore denim and a black t-shirt with faint grease stains. over his heart, a small embroidered cross. "Reed Donovan," the man said, voice like a bass line. "You only knock my old knock when your house is on fire." "It's burning," Ridge said simply. "Clayton, this is Adeline. They took her sister." Pastor Clayton stepped aside. "Then my house is yours." Inside, the shed felt like a workshop and a chapel had married. Motorcycle parts lined one wall. A worn Bible lay open on the workbench. A coffee pot burbled on a hot plate. Clayton poured 3 cups and listened as Ridge described the text, the photo, the address. He asked sharp questions at odd moments about the wire in the glass, the height of the window, the pitch of the echo in Janelle's voice. He was mapping the world behind the words. "Viper," Clayton said when they finished. The name came out like a diagnosis. He always did love a stage. "You heard anything?" Ridge asked. 2 nights back, some of his boys were sniffing around the South Industrial Row, Clayton said. An old tire warehouse near the river, cinder block, boards over the back windows, spray paint on the loading bay. Your wire glass and yellow floor stripe fit. Owner's gone, security dead, makes a good den. Adeline clutched her cup. "Can we call the police with that?" Clayton nodded. "We can. But the police will need probable cause to enter. They'll circle, ask for time. Viper will use that time to move your sister, or worse." "So we go ourselves," Adeline said, the words hot with a courage she did not feel. Clayton met her eyes, surprised and moved. "You're brave." "I'm scared," she said. "Brave is just what scared people do next." Ridge stood. "We'll need wheels that don't scream attention, bolt cutters, binoculars, and a map. We'll also need a way to make them look where we aren't." Clayton set down his cup. "I have an old pickup out back, and what you asked for, and I have prayer. You can mock that until you need it, but I've never seen men like Viper fall from clever alone." Ridge looked down, jaw tight. When he spoke, his voice carried a raw ache. "I used to think God stopped answering when my family died. Maybe he didn't. Maybe I just stopped asking." Clayton's smile was soft and sad. "He heard you then. He hears you now." They spent the next hour preparing. Clayton brought out a faded green pickup with no gloss and a quiet engine. He packed a toolbox, 2 flashlights, a pair of bolt cutters, a hand radio, a cheap trail cam, and duct tape. Ridge studied a paper map and sketched a rough plan on a shop towel. "Drops here," he said, pointing to the south lot on Old Mill Road. "The tire warehouse is 7 blocks north, near the river. If Viper's setting a stage at the drop, he'll leave thin eyes on the den. We'll set the trail cam on a power pole near the lot before dusk to see who comes and goes. Then we go dark, circle to the warehouse, and watch. If we see Janelle, we move fast and quiet. If we don't, we force a change." "What kind of change?" Adeline asked. Ridge tapped the map again. "Noise and light. A staged fire on a dumpster at the old mill lot can pull bodies and eyes south without bringing the whole fire department. Just enough smoke to make them nervous. They'll think it's a trap, and scramble. When they move, we move." Clayton frowned. "That's a lot of moving parts." "It's a lot of people who don't value life," Ridge said. "We don't get a clean shot often. When we do, we take it." Adeline watched them. She felt a wild mix of terror and a sharp, clean focus she had never known. Every piece of the plan was a thread leading to Janelle. She held on with both hands. Clayton looked at her again. "You're sure you want to be there?" "She's my sister," Adeline said. "She would be there for me." He nodded. "Then you'll need this." He went to a drawer and returned with a small canister. "Pepper spray. Aim for the eyes. Don't hesitate. If a door is between you and your girl, break it. If a man is between you and your girl, blind him." Adeline took the canister. It felt too light for what it promised. She slid it into her jacket pocket like a secret. Before they left, Clayton bowed his head. "Father, we ask for sight where there is shadow, courage where there is fear, and protection for the innocent. Guide these two and the child they love. Stop the hands that mean harm. Amen." Ridge's eyes stayed closed a second longer than Adeline expected. When he opened them, something in his face had settled. A line straightened, a weight shifted. They rolled out in the pickup near midnight. The roads were quiet, the world tucked into itself. They parked 2 blocks from the south lot and walked the rest of the way, moving through the dark like the dark belonged to them. Ridge mounted the trail cam on a pole, angled at the lot entrance. Clayton jotted the time. Adeline kept watch with the flashlight cupped in her palm, ready to kill the beam. No engines, no voices, just the sigh of wind through chain-link fence, and the river muttering in the distance. They returned to the truck and drove the long way around to the warehouse row by the river. From a block away, the cinder block building rose like a sleeping animal. Boards crossed the back windows. A lone security light over the loading bay threw a dirty cone on the cracked pavement. A faint thud echoed from inside, like a door bumping a wall or a chair moved by a nervous foot. Adeline grabbed Ridge's sleeve. He held up a hand for stillness and listened. The sound came again. Thud. Pause. Thud. Like a tiny heartbeat trying to be heard. "That's her," Adeline breathed. "That's her." Ridge's eyes flicked across the metal door, the rusty hasp, the small padlock. He crouched by the lock and touched it with 2 fingers, then stood and shook his head. "New. They're in there, but it's not a skeleton crew." Clayton pointed down the alley. "There's a side door with a crash bar. Might be chained from inside." "Then we make them look away," Ridge said. He checked his watch. "We have 1 hour to set the smoke at the south lot and be back here on foot. If Viper splits his men, he'll take Heat south and leave Jitters north. Jitters make mistakes." Adeline nodded, even though her throat felt too narrow for air. They drove back to Old Mill Road, with their headlights off for the last stretch. Ridge and Clayton worked fast at a dented dumpster, stuffing a cardboard box with oily rags and a splash of motor oil from the truck's emergency kit. Clayton lit a small flare, set it deep in the box, and slid the box under the dumpster lip so the fire's glow stayed caged. "They'll see smoke before they see flame," Clayton said. "Enough to spook." They jogged back to the truck, parked it 3 blocks away, and moved on foot to the warehouse. As they approached, Adeline smelled the river and something else, rubber and dust and the metal sour scent of fear. The security light buzzed. Moths threw themselves at it again and again. Inside, the dull thud had grown quieter, or her ears had grown loud with blood. Ridge peered through a crack in the boards. His voice went slow. 2 men at a table, cards, one walking a loop with a bat. Can't see Janelle. There's a room to the right, partitioned by tarps. If she's in there..." He looked at Adeline. "We get 1 clean try." "How?" she asked, barely a breath. "We wait for the smoke to pull them," he said. "When the walker steps outside to call it in or take a leak, because men always do, Clayton jams the crash bar with the pry bar we brought so it won't close behind us. I take the walker. You and I go straight for the tarp room. Clayton stays at the hinge and listens for engines. If engines come, he hits 2 hard knocks. We move like water. No arguing. No heroics. We get the girl or we get out and try again." Adeline felt her knees loosen. She reached into her pocket and touched the pepper spray. "I can do this," she told herself, and then told him, out loud, because she needed him to believe it too. "You already are," Ridge said. Minutes crawled. Far away, an engine spun up and cut. Then another. A faint shout drifted on the night air. Smoke had done its work. The door creaked. A man stepped into the light, squinting, bat resting on his shoulder. Ridge flowed out of shadow and slammed him against the cinder block with a fast arm across the throat. The bat clanged to the ground. The man sagged, gagged, went still. Ridge lowered him gently and propped him in darkness. Clayton wedged the pry bar into the crash bar mechanism and gave a tight nod. Ridge pushed the door. It coughed open. Cold air slid over concrete like a warning. "Stay with me," Ridge whispered. Adeline stepped inside behind him, heart a drum. The warehouse swallowed them, tall, hollow, full of small sounds. Somewhere, a radio murmured under breath. The tarp room stood to the right, gray curtains swaying in the draft. Ridge raised 2 fingers, "Wait," then moved, soft and sure. Adeline followed, each footstep a prayer. He reached the tarp and lifted a corner. A chair, ropes, a gag, and a pair of eyes, wide and wet and fierce. "Janelle!" Adeline didn't cry out. She stepped in, hands flying to the knots. Ridge sliced through with a pocket knife. Janelle choked a sob into his palm and nodded like she understood the rules without being told. 2 hard knocks sounded from the door. Engines. Ridge's jaw hardened. "Go," he breathed. "Now." Janelle stumbled, legs numb. Adeline hooked her sister's arm over her shoulder and kept her moving like she had carried her this way 100 times. They slid through the tarp gap, into the open space, toward the door that was not made for escape, but would be anyway. A voice boomed from the loading bay. "Smoke at the lot! Move!" Boots thundered. Ridge's hand found Adeline's back and pressed. Clayton held the door a sliver as they slipped through. The crash bar screeched against the pry bar and stuck. The 4 of them spilled into the alley, air cold and wild on their faces. "Truck!" Clayton hissed. They ran. Behind them, shouts cracked like whips. A gun barked once, twice. Sparks bit concrete near Adeline's heel. Ridge swung Janelle into his arms the last 10 yards and threw her into the back seat. Clayton peeled away from the curb so cleanly the tires didn't squeal. "Down!" Ridge barked. The truck shot down the alley, turned left, then right, then left again, the river falling away behind them like a bad dream. Ridge twisted to look back. No headlights chased. Not yet. Adeline pulled Janelle into her lap and held her like she had when Janelle was 6, and storms shook the windows. Janelle's breath came in fast, hiccuping waves. Adeline pressed her forehead to her sister's hair and whispered thanks she couldn't finish. Ridge faced forward, both hands fisted on his knees, knuckles pale. He took one long breath and let it out slow. Clayton drove like the road belonged to him, and the night had agreed to keep their secret. They did not speak until the church's tin roof glowed again in the weak floodlight. When the engine cut, the world sighed. Inside the work shed, Clayton locked the door and pulled blankets from a chest. Adeline checked Janelle's wrists and ankles, red, rubbed raw, but skin intact. She kissed every mark like a promise. Ridge paced once, twice, then stopped in front of them. He bent, elbows on his thighs, and covered his face with both hands. When he lifted his head, his eyes were wet. "I made a vow," he said, voice rough. "I told you I'd bring her home." "You did," Adeline whispered, and her voice shook with gratitude and shock, and something new she couldn't yet name. "You did." Clayton handed Janelle a cup of water and touched her hair like a father would. "Rest now. We'll talk later." Ridge straightened and looked at the small clock on the wall. "We bought time," he said. "That's all. Viper will be furious. He'll look for us." Adeline nodded. She knew it, felt it, but would not let fear own the room. "Then we don't waste the time we bought." Raji glanced at Clayton. "Tomorrow before dawn, we move again. We change vehicles, We change roads, and we get far from any place that smells like my past. I know a path through the foothills to the Smokies. There are safe spots up there, old ranger stops, places no one thinks about. Clayton's eyes narrowed. You'll need supplies, fuel, and quiet. Leave before the sun thinks about rising. Adeline looked down at Janelle's fingers wrapped around hers. They were warm and alive. Everything else could wait. They slept in shifts on the church's old pew cushions. In the thin hour just before morning, the sky held its breath over the tin roof. Ridge stood in the doorway, helmet in hand, watching the east turn from ink to ash. When the first bird called, they were already loading the truck. Janelle, stiff but steady, hugged Clayton hard. "Thank you," she whispered, and he smiled like a man who knew prayers had hands and feet. Ridge checked the road once more, then opened the passenger door for Adeline and Janelle. He paused, hand on the jam, and looked at Adeline like he wanted to say 10,000 things, and none would fit. "Ready?" he asked. She squeezed Janelle's hand. "Ready." The truck rolled away from the little church, past the quiet cross and the gas-blue dawn, toward the dark line of mountains that waited like a wall and like a refuge. They didn't know what lay on the other side. They only knew they would face it together. Behind them, in the city they had left before morning could learn their names, a man named Viper woke to smoke and rage and the taste of failure, and swore to find the ones who had slipped from his jaws. Ahead, the road climbed, and the day began. The mountain road twisted upward through morning fog. Ridge drove with both hands steady on the wheel, his eyes flicking from mirror to horizon. In the back seat, Janelle slept, her head resting on Adeline's lap. Every bump in the road made Adeline's heart jump, half expecting headlights to appear behind them, a sign that Viper's men had found their trail. The early light turned the fog gold, and the truck's old engine hummed like a promise. They were safe for the moment, but it felt fragile, like a candle in the wind. Ridge finally spoke, his voice gravel soft. "We'll stop soon. There's an old ranger cabin about 10 miles up. I used it once when I needed to disappear." Adeline looked at him. "Disappear from what?" He hesitated. "Everything. The club. Myself. God." She wanted to ask more, but his expression said enough. The weight he carried was heavy enough without her adding to it. When the truck rounded a bend, the world opened into a wide clearing surrounded by tall pines. The cabin sat at the edge of a creek, small and slanted but still standing. Ridge parked near the porch and stepped out first, scanning the tree line. Adeline woke Janelle gently. "We're here, sweetheart." Janelle blinked sleepily, then winced. When she tried to move her wrists, the rope burns were red and sore. Ridge opened the first aid kit, handing Adeline the gauze. "You're better at gentle things," he said quietly. Adeline smiled faintly. "And you're better at dangerous ones." While she cleaned Janelle's wounds, Ridge started a fire in the stone fireplace. The smell of burning pine filled the air, warm and earthy. For a little while, it felt almost normal. Janelle ate crackers and soup from a can, while Ridge studied an old map spread across the table. "We'll stay low for 2 days," he said. "After that, we'll move farther east. Clayton can contact a church network that helps people relocate. Good people who won't ask questions." Adeline frowned. "You mean witness protection?" "Not official," Ridge said. "Just folks who believe in second chances." She glanced at Janelle. "I can't keep running forever. I have a job, bills, a life." Ridge met her eyes. "You can't live any of those if Viper finds you." Adeline fell quiet. He was right, but the truth stung like salt. After lunch, Janelle dozed again. Adeline stepped outside for air. The wind was cool, carrying the scent of wet earth and pine needles. Ridge followed, standing beside her on the porch. "You think I ruined your life," he said softly. She shook her head. "No, I think you stepped into it." He looked surprised. "Not the answer I expected." "I didn't expect to help a man like you," she said, staring at the creek. "But when I saw your eyes that night, I couldn't just walk away. Maybe I was foolish. Maybe I was faithful. I don't know anymore." He nodded slowly. "You weren't foolish." They stood in silence a long time, the forest whispering around them. Then Ridge said, "I had a family once." Adeline turned to him. "You don't have to—" "I need to," he said, voice rough. "My wife's name was Mary. My boy was 6. They died in a drive-by. Wrong street, wrong day. I joined the club to get revenge, but all I got was emptier. I told myself I could clean up the inside, change it from within. But no one cleans fire with fire. I became what I hated." Adeline's throat ached. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. I kept the cross Mary gave me, but I buried the man she loved." He looked at her then, eyes glimmering with shame and something fragile, hope, maybe. "Then you walked into that gas station, and for the first time in 10 years, someone didn't look at me like a lost cause." Adeline didn't know what to say. She just reached out and touched his sleeve. "Maybe God didn't forget you after all." He gave a tired half smile. "Maybe he sent you to remind me." That evening, the forest grew quiet except for the crackle of the fire. Janelle was asleep again, curled up under a blanket. Ridge sat by the window, rifle on his lap, watching the dark. Adeline brought him a mug of instant coffee. "You really think they'll come this far?" "They'll come as far as hate takes them," he said, "and hate doesn't get tired." "Then neither will we," she said simply. He looked at her with something like admiration. "You talk like a soldier." "I talk like a sister," she said. When dawn crept over the trees, they woke to bird song and the distant echo of engines. Ridge was out the door before Adeline could move. He crouched low, scanning the dirt road below the ridge. 2 motorcycles, black and heavy, were winding up the hill. "Clayton's safe house is burned," Ridge said grimly. "They're tracking the truck." Adeline's heart hammered. "What do we do?" "Run smarter," he said. "They'll expect us to take the road. We'll take the river." He grabbed their packs, handed Adeline her jacket, and lifted Janelle gently. "Can you walk, kid?" Janelle nodded weakly. "I can try." They slipped out the back, following the creek downstream. The water was icy against their boots. Behind them, the cabin grew smaller until it disappeared. The sound of engines grew louder, then stopped. "They're at the cabin," Ridge whispered. "If we're lucky, they'll think we ran north." They followed the stream for nearly an hour until Adeline's legs ached. Finally, Ridge led them into a narrow ravine sheltered by rock. He stopped and leaned against a boulder, listening. The forest was still again. Janelle sat, exhausted. "Are we safe now?" "For now," Ridge said. He crouched beside her, pressing a finger to his lips. "But we keep moving at sundown." Adeline looked up at the sky, streaked with orange. For the first time in days, she felt something close to peace. Not because they were safe, but because they were still together. As night fell, Ridge stirred the fire low and murmured, "When this is over, you'll never have to see me again." Adeline looked across the flickering light. "Maybe I'll want to." He blinked, caught off guard. "Why?" "Because the man I met that night wasn't a monster," she said. "He was a man asking to be saved." Ridge stared at her for a long time, the flames painting his face in gold and shadow. "Maybe we're both trying to be saved," he said softly. The stars above the trees shimmered like small, steady prayers. The sun hadn't fully risen when Ridge kicked dirt over the last of the fire. A faint chill still hung in the ravine, and mist rose from the creek like ghostly smoke. Adeline rubbed her hands together and glanced at Janelle, who slept curled under a blanket of pine needles and wool. Ridge's voice was low and steady. "We move before they circle back. If they lost the truck trail, they'll start checking every hunting road within 10 miles. Adeline nodded. "Where to?" "Pastor Clayton's old friend keeps a repair shed 2 towns east," Ridge said, adjusting his pack. "He fixes tractors, doesn't ask questions. If we make it by sundown, we can rest. There." Adeline glanced toward the forest edge. "And if we don't? Then we make camp again. But we keep moving." She didn't argue. Fear was a steady hum beneath her ribs now, constant but quieter than before. She trusted Ridge. She hated that she did, but she did all the same. By mid-morning, they were deep in the woods. The air smelled of damp bark and moss. Ridge led the way, his boots sure even on uneven ground. Every few minutes, he'd glance back to check on Janelle, whose small frame was weighed down by exhaustion. When they reached a clearing, Adeline called softly, "Let's rest, just for a bit." Ridge hesitated but nodded. 10 minutes? Adeline helped Janelle sit on a log. She handed her water and smiled gently. "You're doing amazing, sweetheart." Janelle took a sip and whispered, "You really think we'll be okay?" Adeline brushed hair from her sister's face. "We already are. You're alive. That's the biggest miracle I've ever seen." Janelle smiled faintly, and Adeline turned to see Ridge kneeling near a patch of dirt, studying tire tracks half buried under leaves. "They were here," he said. 2 bikes, maybe 3, yesterday." "Are they close?" "Closer than I like." He rose, scanning the tree line. "We'll stay off paths. They'll look for footprints where the ground's softest." As they walked, Adeline noticed the way Ridge's shoulders never relaxed. Every sound, the rustle of branches, the snap of a twig, made his eyes dart. His senses worked like a compass, finely tuned to danger. "How long were you with them?" she asked quietly when Janelle walked ahead. "Too long," he said. "Joined at 23. Thought I'd found family. Thought loyalty meant love. And now? Now I know loyalty without conscience is just fear dressed up as honor." Adeline looked at him, something tender stirring in her chest. "Then maybe you're freer than you think." Ridge gave a low laugh. "You always see the bright side, don't you?" "I try to," she said. "It's either that or give up." By late afternoon, clouds rolled in, gray and heavy. The wind shifted. Ridge stopped and lifted his face slightly, sniffing the air. "Rain's coming," he said. "Hard." Within minutes, fat drops began to fall through the canopy. The sky darkened fast. Janelle shivered under her jacket. Ridge spotted a narrow path that led up to a rocky ledge and waved them toward it. They reached a shallow cave just as thunder cracked across the valley. Adeline gasped as lightning flashed, illuminating the forest in white fire. Ridge guided them inside, shaking off rain from his jacket. "Stay dry," he said. "I'll check the slope for runoff." But before he could leave, Adeline caught his arm. "Don't, please. It's not safe out there." He looked down at her hand, then nodded once. "All right." They huddled together as the rain hammered outside. The sound filled the cave like drumming, steady and wild. Janelle, exhausted, drifted into sleep again. Adeline watched the firelight flicker across Ridge's face. His jaw was tight, but his eyes were soft, filled with the weight of a man trying to be good in a world that punished goodness. "You don't sleep much," she murmured. He shook his head. "Haven't in years." "Because of them?" "Because of me," he said quietly. because sometimes the worst part of running from your past is knowing it's running faster. Adeline's chest tightened. She wanted to say something comforting, but nothing seemed big enough for the pain behind his words. So instead, she leaned closer and said softly, "You're not who you were, Ridge. You wouldn't be here if you were." He looked at her for a long moment. The silence between them was thick but not heavy, like two souls recognizing each other's bruises. The rain lasted through the night. When dawn came, the storm had washed the world clean. Mist rose from the ground, silver and slow. Ridge was already awake, sitting near the cave entrance with his rifle balanced across his knees. "Road's washed out," he said, "but the creek's clearer. We'll follow it east another few miles before turning south." They packed quickly. The forest gleamed with dew, every leaf dripping with light. As they walked, Adeline caught Ridge watching her and Janelle. When she met his gaze, he looked away, almost shy. "What?" she asked, smiling despite everything. "Nothing," he said. It's been a long time since I saw people care about each other like that. It's good." "You had it once," she said softly. "Yeah," he murmured. "And I lost it." "Then maybe it's time you found it again." He didn't answer, but his jaw eased, and his stride slowed just enough to let them walk side by side. By noon, they reached a gravel road winding down the mountainside. At the bottom, an old sign read, "Dale's Farm Repairs," in peeling paint. The shed beyond it looked deserted. Tin roof, broken window, a tractor half buried in weeds. Ridge parked them behind the shed and knocked on the side door. "It's Ridge," he said softly. "Friend of Clayton's?" A minute passed before the door cracked open, revealing an older man with a grease-stained cap and wary eyes. "Clayton's still breathing?" "Last I saw," Ridge said. "We need a place to lay low." The man, Dale, studied Adeline and Janelle, then sighed. "You picked a fine mess, Ridge. Get in before I change my mind." Inside, the shed smelled of oil and rust, tools hung on the walls, and a wood stove sat in the corner. Dale poured water into a pot and set it on the stove. "Word is, Viper's gone rabid," he said. "He's put a price on your head, Ridge. $5,000 and a bike to whoever brings you in alive." Adeline froze. "Alive?" "He wants to make a show of it," Ridge said quietly. Dale looked between them. "You plan on running forever?" "No," Ridge said. "Just until I can end it." Adeline's eyes widened. "End it how?" "By walking into the fire," Ridge said. "Not for me, for her." He nodded at Janelle. "Viper won't stop until someone makes him." "No," Adeline said fiercely. "You're not dying for us." Ridge looked at her then, steady, resigned. "I already did once. Now I'm trying to make it mean something." The silence that followed was thick and aching. Janelle stirred on the cot, murmuring in her sleep. Adeline turned to her sister, brushing her hair back gently. When she looked back at Ridge, tears burned behind her eyes. "If you go after him, I'm going with you." "Adeline, no," she said, voice firm. "I didn't risk everything just to lose you now. You saved her. You saved me. You don't get to walk into darkness alone." Ridge opened his mouth, but the words didn't come. For once, the man who always had a plan just stood there, lost for breath. Outside, thunder rumbled again, faint and far away. The mountains seemed to hold their breath. And for the first time, Ridge wondered if maybe, just maybe, he wasn't meant to fight alone anymore. The next morning dawned pale and gray. A faint fog drifted through the valley, curling around the shed like smoke from a dying fire. Ridge stood by the door, tightening the straps on his pack. His movements were quiet, deliberate, like a man preparing for something he couldn't avoid. Adeline woke to the sound of metal buckles and boots scraping against the floor. "You're leaving," she said softly, sitting up on the cot. Ridge didn't turn right away. "I need to draw them away. If I'm on the road, they'll follow me, not you." Her chest tightened. "And what happens when they catch you?" He looked over his shoulder. "Then at least you and Janelle stay alive." Adeline stood, her bare feet cold against the concrete. "You think your death fixes anything? You think that's what we want?" Ridge's jaw tightened, and he finally faced her. "It's not about what I want. It's what's right. I led them here. I'll finish it." "No." Her voice cracked. "You can't keep punishing yourself for what happened years ago. You don't owe them your life, Ridge. You owe yourself a second chance." He met her gaze, something shifting in his eyes. "You sound like Clayton. Maybe he's right." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them felt heavy, filled with things neither dared to say. Then Janelle stirred on the cot, rubbing her eyes. "You're fighting again," she mumbled. Adeline knelt beside her, smoothing her sister's hair. "Just talking, sweetheart. Go back to sleep." Janelle blinked up at Ridge. "You're not leaving, are you? You said we were safe here." Ridge knelt down to her level. His voice softened. "I said I'd keep you safe. Sometimes that means moving. Sometimes it means fighting." Janelle frowned, her small voice trembling. "But you already fought for me." Her words cut through him deeper than a knife. He stared at her for a long time, then looked away. Adeline rose to her feet. "You see, you've already done enough. Let Faith do the rest." Outside, a dog barked in the distance. Ridge's shoulders tensed, instinct snapping back into place. "We're not out of the woods yet," he said, crossing to the window. "Viper's men could be scouting this way. We move by dusk." Dale entered from the back room, holding a thermos. "Road east is clear for now. I'll loan you the old pickup. Don't get sentimental, it's barely holding together, but it'll get you where you need to go." Ridge took it with a nod. "You've done more than enough." Dale gave him a look that was half warning, half prayer. "Don't let that man take your soul twice." Adeline packed quietly. Water bottles, canned food, a flashlight. Every click of a zipper sounded too final. When she finished, she turned to Ridge. "Promise me something." "What's that?" "If we make it through this, you'll stop running. You'll stop trying to die for things you can still live to make right." He hesitated, eyes searching hers. "You really think someone like me gets to start over?" She stepped closer. "I don't think. I believe." For a moment, the world outside the shed disappeared. The war, the fear, the ghosts. There was only the warmth between them. Fragile, but real. Finally, Ridge exhaled. "Then maybe I'll try believing too." The sound of engines rumbled faintly in the distance, pulling them back to reality. Ridge's expression hardened. "They're coming," he said. Adeline grabbed Janelle's hand. "Then let's go." They stepped into the pale light, hearts pounding but steady. The fight wasn't over. But for the first time, Ridge didn't feel alone walking into it. The pickup rattled down the dirt road, its engine groaning with every mile. The sun had dipped low, turning the sky orange and dusty pink. Ridge gripped the wheel tightly, eyes scanning the rearview mirror every few seconds. Adeline sat beside him, her hand wrapped around Janelle's. None of them spoke. The silence was heavy but filled with shared purpose. They had been driving for hours, winding through back roads and forgotten towns, staying clear of highways. The further they went, the more the world seemed to quiet. Old barns stood half collapsed, and the smell of hay and rain lingered in the air. Janelle finally broke the silence. "Where are we going now?" Ridge answered softly. "To end this, one way or another." Adeline turned to him sharply. "What does that mean?" Ridge didn't answer right away. His eyes were on the horizon, where the faint glow of town lights shimmered. "It means Viper's waiting, and if we keep running, he'll find someone else to hurt. I won't let that happen." Adeline shook her head. "There has to be another way." He gave a small, tired smile. "Sometimes peace only comes after you stop hiding from the fight." The road curved toward an old bar on the edge of a truck stop. A neon sign buzzed weakly in the twilight. "Roadhouse Tavern." Ridge slowed the truck and parked behind a row of abandoned cars. "Stay here," he said. "Both of you." Adeline gripped his sleeve. "Ridge!" He looked down at her hand, the edges of his roughness softening. "I'll be careful." Before she could argue, he stepped out into the fading light and walked toward the bar. Adeline's heart pounded. Every instinct screamed to stop him, but something deeper, faith maybe, told her to trust. Inside, the faint sound of music drifted out, followed by laughter and clinking glasses. Through the window, Adeline saw him approach a man at the bar, tall, broad, and covered in tattoos. Even from a distance, she could feel the tension. Ridge said something. The man turned, eyes narrowing. A heartbeat later, Ridge slammed him into the counter. Chaos erupted, chairs toppled, shouts filled the air. Adeline jumped from the truck, grabbing Janelle's hand. "Stay behind me!" But before she reached the door, Ridge burst through it, dragging the man by his collar. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead. He shoved the man against the wall. "Where's Viper?" he growled. The man spat blood and sneered. "You think you can kill the devil that made you?" Ridge's jaw tightened, but he didn't strike. He leaned close and whispered something only Adeline could hear. "No, I came to bury him." He let the man drop, turned to Adeline, and motioned toward the truck. "We know where he is," he said. "It ends tonight." Adeline's pulse raced, but she saw it in his eyes. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about redemption. The moon hung low as Ridge drove the pickup down the gravel road toward the river. The air was cold, sharp, and still. In the distance, faint lights flickered through the trees, the warehouse where it had all begun. Adeline sat beside him, heart pounding. Janelle was in the back seat, silent, holding her sister's scarf like a lifeline. Ridge's voice was calm but heavy. "Viper's in there. He won't expect us this soon." Adeline swallowed hard. "And if he does?" "Then we trust something bigger than luck," Ridge said. He parked a quarter-mile out and killed the lights. The night swallowed them whole. They walked the rest of the way, boots crunching softly over gravel and fallen leaves. The river whispered nearby, black and restless. When the warehouse came into view, Adeline's breath caught. It looked almost the same as before. Dark windows, graffiti-covered walls, the smell of oil and smoke. But this time she wasn't running from it. She was walking toward it. Ridge crouched behind a dumpster, peering through a gap. Two men guarded, the door, smoking, laughing. "Two outside," he whispered. "More inside, maybe four. I'll take the ones out front. When I signal, you get Janelle to the truck and drive." Adeline shook her head. "We go together." Ridge looked at her, the corners of his mouth tightening. "You're the bravest person I've ever met." Before she could respond, he moved. The first guard went down silently, a sharp hit to the jaw. The second turned, startled, but Adeline threw a rock, catching his attention just long enough for Ridge to strike. Both men crumpled to the ground. They slipped inside. The air reeked of gasoline and fear. At the far end of the room, a single lamp burned over a table. Viper sat there, a gun beside his hand, his grin sharp as a blade. Well, he drawled, look who came home. Ridge stepped forward. I didn't come home, he said quietly. I came to end it. Viper rose slowly, eyes gleaming. You think you can outrun sin, Ridge? Ridge didn't flinch. No, but maybe I can face it. The words hung in the air like a prayer, and the night held its breath. The two men stood in silence, the dim light flickering between them. Viper's grin faded when Ridge didn't reach for his weapon. Instead, Ridge stepped closer, his voice steady. I'm not fighting you, Viper. Not anymore. Viper snarled. You got soft. That woman turned you into a coward. Ridge shook his head. She reminded me what courage really is. Viper lunged, gun raised, but a flash of light filled the room. Adeline had thrown a metal wrench, striking his arm. The gun clattered to the floor. Ridge grabbed it, then threw it far into the dark. You'll never own me again, Ridge said. Viper roared and charged. The two crashed into the table, the lamp falling, sparks flying. Adeline screamed his name, then silence, broken only by Ridge's rough breath and Viper lying still. It was over, but the weight of it pressed heavy on every heart. Ridge stood over Viper's motionless body, chest heaving. The smell of smoke and oil filled the warehouse. Adeline rushed to him, grabbing his arm. We have to go now. He nodded, still catching his breath. It's done. His voice was low, hollow, but steady. They stumbled outside into the cool night air. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Someone had heard the fight. Ridge turned to Adeline, eyes tired but peaceful. I'm not running anymore. Adeline's voice trembled. Then let's walk forward, together. He looked at her, something soft breaking through the hard lines of his face. You saved me, Adeline. You didn't just stop me from dying. You showed me how to live again. She smiled through tears. Maybe we saved each other. Behind them, the warehouse flickered with the glow of burning light, an ending and a beginning all at once. Ridge took her hand, fingers rough and warm. Together, they walked into the dawn. Weeks passed. The town buzzed with news of the raid at the old warehouse, of a biker who'd turned himself in to save others. Ridge faced the police, confessed everything, and refused to hide. Adeline visited him every day at the county jail, bringing letters from townsfolk and quiet prayers. Janelle often joined her, smiling shyly through the glass. You'll get your second chance, Adeline said one afternoon. Ridge's eyes softened. I already did, the night you saw something worth saving. The trial came and went. Testimonies poured in. Pastor Clayton, Dale, even an Officer Ridge once helped. The judge granted him probation and community service. When Ridge stepped out of the courthouse, Adeline waited with open arms. Ready to start again? She asked. He smiled, a free man for the first time in years. With you? Always. Spring sunlight poured through the cafe windows, warm and golden. Months had passed since the night at the warehouse, and life finally felt steady again. Ridge and Adeline stood behind the counter of their small roadside diner, the Second Chance Cafe, serving coffee to truckers, travelers, and townsfolk who'd once whispered about the biker and the brave woman. Janelle balanced plates at a corner table, her laughter bright and full of life. She was back in school, studying nursing again, stronger than before. Ridge wiped down the counter, glancing at the framed photo hanging near the register. A picture of Pastor Clayton, smiling wide, his arm around them both. Never thought peace could look like this, Ridge said softly. Adeline smiled, setting down a tray. Peace doesn't always roar, Ridge. Sometimes it just hums like coffee brewing in the morning. He chuckled. You always find a way to make things sound holy. Because they are, she said gently. We're still here, Still together. That's wholly enough. As the evening crowd settled, Ridge turned off the neon sign, leaving only the warm glow from inside. He looked at Adeline and whispered, "Pretend to kiss me again. For real this time." She laughed, stepping closer. "No pretending this time." Their kiss was quiet, certain, filled with everything they had survived. Outside, a new customer paused by the glowing sign. The Second Chance Cafe, where love never judges. Inside, laughter and light spilled through the windows, and for the first time, Ridge felt like the world wasn't something he needed to outrun. It was something he could finally come home to. Thank you for listening. Stories connect us in the most unexpected ways. If you felt that spark today, make sure you're subscribed. I share a new one daily, and the next might change your day.